So the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G, it's a phone that's been out for a few weeks now, and honestly it's a very good mid-range phone, but you might be wondering if it's worth buying, especially with a lot of competition around this price range. Well, I've been testing it out and I wanted to give you a full review and let you know all of my thoughts on it. So with all that being said, let's talk about the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G. So if you look at this phone, you're going to see a big change from the A53. The A53 was a very popular phone. A lot of people loved it because of all of the features that it brought to the mid-range. Of course, it brought an SD card slot. Those are things that you don't get in higher-end phones, and it was fast enough for a lot of people with good battery life. So the A53, it wasn't perfect, it did have some issues, but a lot of people really liked it. And now the A54, what they really did to it is they really differentiated it by making it the same in some ways. They differentiated it from the older line and they made it look very similar to the Galaxy S23 Ultra and a lot of those phones by making the design look the same. And that honestly isn't so bad because they did make it a lot more premium. It feels a lot more premium in the hands and they used more premium materials on the build. So I really actually like the design of it. The look, you may love it, you may not like it, but overall I do think it's a little bit better than the Galaxy A53. Now it doesn't have a headphone jack on this model, but it does have an SD card slot, so that is one good thing that I really do like about it. And again, the feel of it, it just feels like a really nice glass back, and that's surprising to find at this price range. And this phone also has a nice water resistance rating. It's an IP67 water resistance rating. It's got a decent processor in it. It's an Exynos processor, but it is fast enough for most things that you're going to do on it. It's an Exynos 1380 and the base model does have 6 gigabytes of RAM. So if you're not a big phone nerd out there, well, this might actually be a good phone for you because I really think this phone is fast enough for most people. It's got a really nice display. The cameras are very, very good, and they're really trying to give you most of what a higher end phone would give you and just give it to you at a fraction of the cost. And that's what the design is like, right? The design is very similar to the S23 Ultra. You're not going to notice a huge difference. Of course, there's going to be some big quality differences as far as the type of glass they're using, but it's not something that your average person would even notice. So if someone is out there looking for a phone that looks good and feels good, this is definitely going to fit that bill. And of course, the display, it's actually very good. It's not a quad HD display, but it does have a 120 Hz refresh rate, and it's a 6.4 inch screen, and it's a 2340 by 1080 resolution. That's a really nice resolution for a screen. It looks really crisp and clear. The colors are good, and it's a nice Super AMOLED screen. Now, if that's a bunch of mumbo jumbo to you, you just need to know this screen, it's like 90% as good as the screens you're going to find on other $800, $900, or even $1,000 phones. This is a really nice premium screen. Samsung is known for that, and they brought that to this A54 line. I remember the A53, the screen was good or okay, but the colors are so much better in this screen. I am very, very impressed with it. It also gets very, very bright. Now, it doesn't get as bright as the iPhone 14 Pro Max or a lot of these other higher end phones or even the higher end Samsung phones, but honestly, the brightness is very, very close. We're talking nearly 1,000 nits of brightness on this phone, and that is just impressive to get in a phone under $500. Now, outside of that brightness level, just again, know that it looks great for entertainment. I love this display, and when we go to performance, it does perform well. But this is going to be the one place that some of you are going to really hiccup at, or you're not going to be sure if you should get it. You're going to really have a pause in yourself when you're considering buying this, because if you're used to a lot of higher end phones and then you go down to this phone will feel a little bit slower to some of you. This still is faster than the A53, but it's going to be a little slower than even something like the Google Pixel 6a or the Google Pixel 7a that's going to be coming out very, very very shortly, maybe even the day after I record this. So that phone is going to come out, and yes, it's going to feel a little bit snappier than this phone, but still, this phone performs well. I don't want to get it twisted. Like, it is a good performing phone. It's just a little bit slower than some flagships out there, so that means an app might take a second or two longer to load, but it is still very, very good. I don't think your average person is going to notice it. That's why this phone, when you look at the price point, I know it says $450, but the A line is known to go on sale quite a bit, especially with a lot of those prepaid carriers. They're going to drop this phone down to $250 or $200, or a lot of bigger carriers will have a ton of sales on this phone. And when that happens, and when you find this phone for $250, $300, this phone is going to be a steal for that price. Like, this is, again, 80% of a flagship experience, and you're getting it in a phone that is very, very affordable. So it's very good. It's still fast enough, and I never felt like I was having a huge hiccup where I was like, oh my gosh, this is so darn slow. Like, you do have a 120 hertz refresh rate, and the performance is good, but it is just a little bit slower than that flagship level, and that's where some of you who expect a high-end experience, you're going to notice. And with the Google Pixel line, they did bring that flagship processor to their mid-range phones, and that's one of the strengths of that, right? But this phone, one of the strengths is the display. The strength of this phone is the SD card slot and how Samsung provides good quality updates. Those are going to be a lot of strengths on this phone. The performance is good, but it won't be quite as good of a strength, again, as something like a Google Pixel phone. But it will get you by. It's not going to be super laggy or super hiccupy or anything like that. I do think that your average person who's used to phones around $500, I think they're going to enjoy it because, at least in the US, there have not been a lot of good options at this price point, and this is a really nice option for the money. Now, if we move on from the performance, you are going to see some extra features have made it to this phone. At least there is a fingerprint sensor in the front of the screen. It's not ultrasonic, but it's still okay. But the big thing that I love about this phone is the battery life. 5,000 milliamps on the battery, another strength of this phone, because if you compare this to the 6A or even a lot of other mid-range phones, you're not going to get that large of a battery, and 5,000 is a very, very large battery size when you compare it to other phones. So I'm very impressed with the battery size and the battery life. I was getting very good screen time on this phone. I'm talking like 7-8 hours of screen on time. It was very, very good for me. Your usage may vary depending on what you do. And the cameras were very good too. And that's really the theme of this review, right? If you look at the cameras, you look at the screen, you look at performance, everything is very, very good. And it's not the best, but it's still really, really good. So this is a great phone to recommend to those family members who want a good phone, but they don't care about all the frills. They just want a good phone that's going to get good software support. Like, this phone is going to get very good software support from Samsung. So they just want a good phone that works, that's going to work for a while, that's going to be fast enough for them, and they're not too picky. They don't need the absolute best. This is a terrific phone for those people, or for those bargain hunters, especially if you find this on sale. Because if you look at the cameras, again, they're very good. They're not the best, but they are very, very close. You have a 50 megapixel camera, a 12 megapixel camera, and a 5 megapixel camera. Of course, that 5 megapixel is a macro camera. It doesn't mean a lot to me, but I think the 50 megapixel wide camera and that 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, they do fairly well. And this does record 4K video quality. It's not the best, but it's still very, very good. And that's what this phone is all about. So if you're someone out there and you're bargain hunting, you're going to see a phone that's very awesome to use, and it's a good experience. So this phone, it does have a virtual proximity sensor. That is one thing I didn't like. They've had that in previous Galaxy A phones, and I don't like it because the phone is supposed to go black when it goes to your face, and I want an actual sensor to detect that. I don't like relying on software or other things because it can be unreliable. But in this phone, it was very reliable. I didn't have a lot of issues with it going black and then turning back on when I was walking around. So I was impressed with that, even though I don't like that they just took that out of these Galaxy A phones. So there's not a lot that I really dislike. There's not a lot of bad parts to this phone that I'm worried about or that I had issues with. This is a very good phone, and it's for those people who want most of a good phone. They want almost all of the good things from a flagship, but they're willing to compromise on some things, like charging speed. You're not going to get 45-watt charging speed. You are going to have to go a little bit lower than that. Like 25 watts, that's not super fast, so some of you aren't going to like that. They don't have an ultrasonic fingerprint sensor. The glass is not going to be quite as shatter resistant as some other higher end phones. You don't have wireless charging, for example. That might be something that you really want. But if you're willing to give up some of those things, you're going to get a terrific experience, a gorgeous, amazing AMOLED display. You're going to get a very good performing phone. Maybe not the best. Again, it's a step below it, but I think it's going to be good enough for most people. And you are going to have great battery life. This phone has really all of the essentials. You do have an SD card slot as well. So I would highly recommend this phone to those bargain hunters, to those people who see it on sale. I would highly recommend this phone to those of you who really want an SD card slot. For those of you who want a phone around $500 and you really need that, or you need Samsung software support, if you want an overall good, reliable experience, this is going to be right there neck and neck with the Google Pixel phones and the Google Pixel 6a and the 7a. I would highly recommend this Galaxy A54. It's a very good phone. So thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Thank you for supporting me, as again, I've moved spaces. It's been really hard to get content out during the move. It's been very stressful. So thank you for supporting me through that time. Please like this video and share it. That would mean a lot. And use those links in the description if you are interested in buying anything from those websites. That does help to support me as a creator. And also, of course, you could watch other videos if you get a little bit of time. So I hope you have a great day. I hope you enjoy your week, and I hope you have a good one.